Okay, hi everyone. It's so nice to be here today. Do you remember what you ate yesterday? For me, I had oatmeal for breakfast, and to my oats, I added apples, berries, spices. It's really important for us to understand how people are eating because poor dietary patterns are one of the top risk factors for chronic disease and mortality. However, how we eat is really complex. We don't just eat oats, we eat multidimensional meals that are made of multiple different foods. How we eat also changes from day to day. Yesterday I wanted oatmeal, maybe tomorrow I will want toast. As well, how we eat is influenced by lots of other factors like our socioeconomic status, our culture, and more. Historically, nutrition research has really diminished a lot of the complexity that is found within the dietary pattern. So we've looked at single foods or nutrients and also created summary scores of someone's overall diet quality. However, we're obviously not getting at all of the complexity that's in a dietary pattern when we look at that snapshot, although it is often very interpretable. Artificial intelligence has emerged as a possible way to better address the complexity within dietary patterns. However, artificial intelligence is not always interpretable enough to translate the evidence into public health policy that can improve eating patterns in Québec. So we were curious to know if we could combine the complexity within artificial intelligence with the interpretability of traditional approaches. And to do this, we conducted a study among adults in Quebec and asked them everything that they ate over the previous 24 hours. To look at traditional approaches and how people were eating, we used a diet quality index, so a single score to estimate someone's overall diet quality. And to get at the complexity within the dietary patterns, we used Gaussian graphical models and the Louvain algorithm to estimate networks of the different foods that are in the dietary pattern and how they're jointly related with each other, and the Louvain algorithm to estimate communities of foods that are often consumed together. As well, dietary patterns often differ by socioeconomic status, so we estimated 2 patterns stratified by material deprivation. What we found is that dietary patterns do indeed differ by material deprivation, but when we look at our traditional method, our diet quality index, which is the row in blue, we see that we have a single score, which shows us that if you're less materially deprived or better off, you have higher diet quality compared to people who are more materially deprived. When we look at our networks from the Gaussian graphical models, we get a lot more detail into how foods are consumed together within the dietary pattern that we don't get from a single score. So for one example, we have the community in pink, which I've called the foods to limit community. And we see that among the less materially deprived, their foods to limit community is quite well connected to other communities in the dietary pattern. When we look at people who are more materially deprived, we see that their foods to limit community really is almost completely independent of the rest of the dietary pattern, which could suggest that people who are eating more foods from that food to limit category are not necessarily eating a lot of other foods within the dietary pattern. As well, for usefulness sake, we needed to know if these diet quality scores were related with our networks that we created. And what we found is that diet quality was related with the communities within the dietary pattern as we expected. So for example, having higher intake of foods to limit was associated with a lower diet quality score, which makes sense if you think about it practically. So overall, we think that combining approaches to look at dietary patterns and diet quality can provide insights that are both interpretable and maintain complexity within the dietary pattern. So for example, if we see that someone is eating lots of saturated fats, which are from the foods to limit community, we saw that that was associated with higher intakes of red meat and higher intakes of high sugar, high fat foods. So that presents us with a really interesting potential intervention point within the dietary pattern. Potentially if we constructed an intervention targeted to lower saturated fat intake, that could have additional beneficial implications for red meat and high sugar, high fat foods. So overall, having a better understanding of complex dietary patterns can help us to inform more targeted research, policies, and interventions that will promote the public health of adults across Quebec. Thank you.
Thank you so much.